Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Nintendo, lawyers, and emulators. And there's a very interesting article here that's got a lot of people talking, and this article was translated from one in Japanese, so the translation may not be 100% accurate. But at the same time here, it gives a pretty big insight on Nintendo's angle. The article is titled, Nintendo's Attorney Weighs In on What Makes Emulators Illegal. And like everything I talk about, links will be in the description below at the bottom. I'm assuming that most people watching this video are well aware of Nintendo's reputation about being vigilant against the emulation scene and stuff they don't like. Anyways, here, this appears to be a quote from the lawyer. To begin with, are emulators illegal or not? That is a point often debated. While you can't immediately claim that an emulator is illegal in itself, it can become illegal depending on how it's used. Just like a fork can be illegal depending on how it's used. I don't think I need to clarify, but I added the fork bit in because I thought that argument was very similar based on the way the lawyer had phrased it. Anyways, here, they continue to say, or the article continues to sum up, if an emulator copies a program belonging to the game device it's imitating, that can constitute copyright infringement. If the emulator has a function that disables security mechanisms such as encryption, it may be considered a violation of Japan's Unfair Competition Prevention Act. And that is big because this is what Nintendo used to go after stuff like Ryujinx and Yuzu. And the second option here I would say is far less common. If the emulator contains links to sources where you can download pirated games. I don't know of many emulators at all that supply games that you can download. Most of them are bring your own game. So I think most emulators out there avoid this point altogether. It is worth pointing out here that I am not a lawyer and this is not legal advice. I don't even think I needed to say that. I think most people are well aware or at least could make that connection. Anyways, here, based on my opinion, I would say that emulators for the Switch and I guess the Switch 2 and whatever else console Nintendo pumps out in the future years will have problems. I don't know if emulators will exist for those consoles. And that's for one very big reason. TPM, technical protection measures. If the emulator violates those or circumvents that, then Nintendo will come after them, or seemingly will come after them and take them down. I mean, they've had success in the past taking down Yuzu and also Ryujinx. And I would assume Nintendo is designing their future consoles to have TPM in there that you can't emulate without circumventing it. On the other hand, though, I would say never say never. There may be a way around it. Someone may be clever enough to figure something out to not circumvent TPM in the way that Nintendo is banking on and maybe find a way to make emulators for those consoles. Who knows, though? That's a lot of speculation, and we're not going to know until someone actually manages to do it. As for prior consoles, I think they're absolutely fine based on all of these statements. I don't think any of the prior systems Nintendo has are subject to TPM, and I think all of them are absolutely safe. So let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. What do you think about the future of the emulation scene? Do you think the future is at risk? Do you think the emulation scene is absolutely fine? And do you think the emulation scene may not grow as much now, considering that future consoles may be a challenge to emulate? Very curious to hear your opinions on the matter. And continuing to talk about Nintendo stuff, next up here we're talking about Pretendo. And it seems that there's some controversy here that doesn't really seem to be a controversy at the same time. So here is the title of an article over on Nintendo Everything. Nintendo warns against using unauthorized services such as online Wii U replacement, which is Pretendo. So for those who may not be aware, Pretendo is a free and open source replacement for Wii U and 3DS servers that Nintendo has taken offline. So if you have those consoles or possibly emulators for those systems, you may be able to continue playing online thanks to Pretendo. So this statement was translated from Google from a Nintendo customer service account. And I don't know if people using Pretendo were calling Nintendo customer service for help for servers or something. Anyways, here is the response. We have confirmed the existence of unauthorized services that replace functions such as online play for the Wii U, which ended service on April 9th, 2024. Please refrain from using such services as they may pose unexpected security risks. So based on that statement, and that statement is really all we've got to go on right now. That's all there is. Some people are taking that statement and saying that Pretendo is at risk of being shut down by Nintendo. And I would think that's possibly a little far-fetched. I really don't see an issue based on this statement at all. In my opinion here, I think Bob Wolf explains this the best, and I think he's got the correct take. So Bob says, "My theory is that Nintendo looked into Pretendo and realized there was nothing they could legally do about it, so they opted to release a statement about some vague security risks." And I couldn't agree more. My guess here, and I could be very wrong about this one, very wrong, but I don't think so. My guess here is that this is the last we'll probably ever hear from Nintendo about Pretendo aside from security risks. I don't think there's going to be much else to it, but we'll have to wait and see. But moving on from that and still talking about online and communication stuff, next up we're talking about some very big news for xemu or xemu or subscribe to Mr. Sujano, depending on how you wanted to pronounce that. Anyways, here, xemu has just introduced preliminary support for Xbox Live Communicator. So here's their official announcement over on Discord. xemu now has support for Xbox Live Communicator emulation, so you can use your system's microphone in games that support voice chat. There is not a GUI to configure it yet, but it can be easily added in the monitor. See here for more details, and it drops right to their website. So it is published, it is released, and it is active. xemu keeps getting better and better. I mean, they've had a strong start to 2025, and well, the hits keep coming. I'm very curious to see how this is adopted, how people are using it, if they're using it the way it was supposed to be intended, or if people are just yelling over it or playing music you can't really understand it because it's poor quality and clipping all over the place. I mean, back in the day with Xbox Live Communication, it was really chaotic. I'm assuming it's going to be the exact same here, and I'm assuming some people are just going to do it out of nostalgia. We'll have to wait and see, but let me know your thoughts. Next up is a quick heads up here. We're talking about Windows emulation on Android with not Win Now, but Winlator. And not necessarily with Winlator, but for custom Turnip drivers for Winlator. So if you've got a Snapdragon CPU with an Adreno GPU, well, I guess depending on the Snapdragon CPU here, you might be excited to know that Winlator Turnip driver version 25.0.0 revision 7 has just dropped. Based on the reactions here, some people may be disappointed about this one. I mean, this person says, "Will this bring back my dad?" And I guess someone tested it out and said, nope, won't bring back your mom either. But moving on from that, and next up we're talking about Simple Launcher. For those who may not be aware, Simple Launcher is an emulator front end that makes playing retro games a breeze. And Simple Launcher just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, release 3.8.0 is the latest update, and this one is a pretty big one. They say experience the application in your language. They've added translations for 17 languages. On top of that, there's a whole bunch of fixes, updates, and they've enhanced support for Kega Fusion and Master Gear. This one is 100% free and open source, and again, like everything I talk about, links are in the description below. Next up, we're talking about Fortune's Run. Now, this is an early access game that was released back in 2023. It appears this game is going to be in early access for the foreseeable future, probably for quite a while. So based on one of the latest updates from the developer, I'm surprised the game's not changing to Unfortune's Run. The developer says they've been sentenced to prison for the next 3 years, and the other developer on the project has quit. I don't know about you, but to me that's a pretty huge blow to the overall state of the game. The developer says the game isn't totally dead, but obviously stuff is going to be paused while they're in prison. We'll have to wait and see on the future of this one. Next up, we're talking about SteamOS, and over on PC Gamer, there's a very interesting article, and in that article has some quotes from a Valve dev. So the title of the article is Valve Dev Says SteamOS Isn't About Killing Windows. If a user has a good experience on Windows, there's no problem. Based on some of the quotes in the article, I'm taking it as Steam is not really putting too much pressure on themselves to develop an OS to compete against Windows. If people use SteamOS, great. If people don't, that's okay too. And I like that approach. They say there's not really a roadmap here. They're focused on handhelds and possibly Steam machines in the future. From what I've seen so far from Valve, and I guess specifically Proton, the Linux gaming space has a lot of room for growth. I mean, once the whole anti-cheat problem is fixed and you can play basically any game on Windows on Linux, I'm assuming that a lot of people will want to try out Linux as their main operating system. I could be completely wrong with that line of thinking, but based on even just some of these comments, I don't think I am. I think people may try out Linux. I mean, this person says 100% this. I'd switch in a heartbeat if I could natively play my games in SteamOS without any hassle. Smell My Farts says something very interesting. If SteamOS can natively play all my Steam games, then I'll switch immediately. I greatly dislike what Microsoft has been doing with Windows, and the only reason I've never switched before is because dealing with Linux is a pain in the butt. And that is interesting because SteamOS is Linux. But I'm just wondering, due to the nature of how SteamOS is structured, obviously something like Bazite as well, does that make the whole Linux adoption a lot easier for people who may not be comfortable using Linux, or maybe have that bad opinion or bad view of what Linux could possibly be like? But moving on, and next up we're talking about Gopher64. Gopher64 is a Nintendo 64 emulator written in Rust, and it just got a few brand new updates. One of the big updates from Gopher64 is in version 0.1.16. It was released 3 days ago, and they added in Arch64 support. So for those of you with ARM CPUs, you may want to check this one out. There's also a whole bunch of bug fixes and cleanups and even more. This one is very actively developed. At the time of filming, they're on version 0.1.18. Next up, we're talking about one of my favorite Linux distributions. I've got a bunch. Anyways, here we're talking about Linux Mint. Linux Mint has just announced the availability soon of 22.1 Xia. So right now on their website, if you go to downloads, you'll just see version 22 Wilma. Anyways, here, this one will be an LTS release, so long-term support, and it will be supported until 2029. There will be a bunch of different desktop environments you can get. I think the Cinnamon one will be the flagship one as well. It ships with Cinnamon 6.4. There's going to be a bunch of new options here, for example, selecting a power mode directly from the power applet. The kernel in this one is Linux 6.8. Next up, we're talking about a rumor, or possibly some news now, maybe a confirmed rumor. Anyways, here it's over on MP First, and it's generated a bit of discussion online. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion remake is real. First gameplay improvement details revealed. This article has a ton of information, and I do recommend giving it a read if you are interested in the subject. It seems that Virtuos is the company behind this one, and they're rebuilding, or they've rebuilt the entire game in Unreal Engine 5. There's going to be some modernization changes to it, but probably the same story, same characters, and well, same world, but possibly a different experience considering the game has been remade. And I would take all of this with a huge grain of salt. I don't think this has been confirmed. I still think it's a rumor. And that's because this information comes from a former Virtuos employee. So not official from the company. Nothing from the company just yet. We're going to have to wait and see on this one, but I'm going to take this one with a grain of salt. Next up, we're talking about fight sticks. And if you've got a fight stick, or you're interested in a fight stick or arcade stick, you like to mod things, you're thinking about building one, or you're thinking about buying one, this announcement to me is pretty cool. This is super interesting technology. So Jason's Custom says it's official. The Panzer Fight Stick Hall Effect system is in production and open for pre-orders. He continues to say the Hall Effect system gives you unparalleled opportunities to fine-tune when each of your buttons actuate. Since there are over 1,000 potential set points for each input, you can control each switch's actuation point in nearly 0.002 millimeter increments. To me, that is crazy. This is a huge advancement in the fight stick space. I mean, if you really analyze your play, if you take a look at the training mode, see what buttons you're hitting, maybe you're hitting buttons at the wrong time, you can adjust how sensitive each button is when they're going to actuate and really change your gameplay. I mean, that would take me forever to figure out and forever to set up. At the same time here, if you really analyze your gameplay, this could be a game changer. These PCBs go for about $167. They're on sale right now for $124, and you will need to provide magnetic switches. But I mean, for someone who really analyzes their gameplay, really wants to get any sort of edge on someone else, I mean, this could be a very big potential option, a very big thing for professional players or aspiring professional players. I could be wrong with that, but I don't think so here. I mean, this to me is super cool tech, and I'm hoping it gets wider adopted. Next up, we're talking about the Stop Killing Games initiative. We've covered this one a bunch in the past, and Accursed Farms has a brand new video on it, and I do recommend checking it out. It's almost 11 minutes long. It's not very long at all. And he's got an update for the UK. If you're in the UK, you'll probably want to pay attention to this one. In the video, Accursed Farms says that the UK is in the not completely hopeless category. It's still important, but at the same time, he still thinks that France, Germany, and Australia are going to be the big cases. Anyways, the petition is live and people can sign it, and after 10,000 signatures, the government has to take a look at it. I think the biggest thing here, or at least the biggest first step, is to figure out how the government sees the law, what the law says, and what's clear and what's not. I mean, if the government says there's nothing going to happen because of the petition, because it's a cut and dry situation, well, there's at least clarification there. Right now, there's a whole lot of uncertainty in the UK. At the time of filming, this has 6,231 signatures, and I'm assuming it's going to hit that 10,000 goal. At 100,000, the petition will be considered for debate in Parliament. Considered and actually debated is something different entirely. We'll have to wait and see on here, but I'm assuming it's going to hit 10,000 at the very minimum. And speaking about game preservation, next up we're talking about Halo 2 E3 2004 multiplayer build for Xbox. Someone has purchased this and uploaded it to archive.org. They spent $5,000 and just uploaded it for free for everyone, so $5,000 out of the good of their hearts. It seems compatibility for this demo is super hit and miss, and it is very bare bones. You can play multiplayer on the Zanzibar map, but most of the features are locked and unavailable. I'm wondering if people take a look at this and simply hack it or modify it to make it far more compatible. On a side note here, interestingly, the person behind this one who forked money out of their own pocket to purchase it and release it on the internet for free as opposed to hoard it and sell it to the highest bidder is a video game store owner in Norway. Go figure. And last up here, we're talking about arguably one of the biggest fighting game tournaments of the year, or at least one of the most well-known ones, and that is EVO. And EVO had their 2025 announcement show just recently, and they've announced a lot of the games, not more, but a lot of the games that will be appearing on the main stage. We've got Street Fighter, Tekken 8, Guilty Gear, Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Under Night In-Birth, MK1, Fatal Fury, and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And then there's also going to be Rivals of Aether on there, the new Virtual Fighter, King of Fighters 15, and even more. EVO 2025 takes place from August 1st to 3rd in Vegas, and if you wanted to see the whole pre-show, it's just a little over an hour in length, and maybe worth checking out if you're interested in fighting games and tournaments and arguably cool stuff. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.